Once again, we are led in with a majestic tune, but there has been nothing majestic about watching your team, your town, your Philadelphia Flyers. Here to break it down is Snow The Goalie, the only Flyers podcast, the people's podcast, the players' podcast. I'm Russ Joy, at Joy on Broad, joined as always by a somewhat positive this evening, oddly enough, Anthony SanFilippo, who you can find on Twitter at AntSanPhilly. Anthony, a lot to break down here. You and I, if nothing else, it's been fun to be down there together at the Wells Fargo Center covering this team, but the on-ice product has been pretty much anything but fun to watch. Before we get into it and break all the action down, how are you feeling this evening?
Well, the reason I'm in a positive mood, Russ, is because we record at a reasonable hour. I say this all the time. As long as we're recording at a reasonable time, and it's 8:30 p.m. on a Wednesday, so this is, we're both still awake. I mean, you're getting close to your bedtime, and I have a few hours yet before I start to nod off, and so yeah, I'm usually in a good mood. It's when you catch me late at night or at the crack of dawn that I'm, curmudgeonly. That said, I don't necessarily know if I'm going to be pleasant in describing what's been going on with the hockey team. I think that we might have, we're not going scorched earth here just yet. I mean, they are 4-5, so it's not like they're 1-8. But at the same time, it's just the same old. Nothing has changed with this team. And we get the same excuses. Although I will say, and we'll get into this a little bit tonight, I'm really starting to like the reactions that we're getting from Dave Haxtell after losses. I never thought I'd say that, because I think that the guy, up until this season, has been just awful in talking about what went wrong with the team. And I think so far this season, we've gotten some really good answers from him. I know I've personally gotten good answers from him to questions I've asked. I really feel like that, I think he's starting to recognize that this needs to change or he's on a hot seat. I don't know. I think that, if I'm going to be amateur psychologist here for a second. I want you to be amateur psychologist too with me.
Okay.
When you feel pressure at your job and you feel like you've been doing your job well, you get a little defensive, right? You get a little bit more willing to say, well, gee, this is what's going on around me, kind of thing. And he has never been a guy to call out his players. And yet, after the game against Colorado on Monday night, he identified two players, not by name, but specific situations, so it was easy for us to figure out who he was talking about. And in the instances he was talking about were Jordan Wheel taking a bad penalty and Sean Couturier not being too far away from the play, not playing the way he's supposed to play defensively on a play. He identifies these players within situations and basically says, yeah, this is why. This is where things are going wrong. And to me, that screams of a guy who's starting to feel the heat.
Yeah, I don't think you're wrong. So sitting down there and getting kind of used to the whole jam, to put it in Lavi terms, who, by the way, if you haven't seen it, you've got to go find the video of former Flyers coach Peter Laviolette going out meeting the media with a bull's mask on. It was incredible, like full head of a bull. It was awesome. Anyway, I kind of miss him. You're right. Like Haxtell, I think, has opened up a lot to the media. I know he caught a little bit of flack because leading into the season, there were some stories about him wakeboarding, I guess to make him more relatable. I feel like we're coming down the final stretch of a political campaign, and all of a sudden we're finding out what Haxtell and crew like to do in their free time, and as like a last-ditch effort to try to get the fans to like him. But I will argue that while I think you've gotten some good responses, I think a couple of the other people down there have gotten they've been able to kind of pull back some of the layers of this onion. I was saying on the elevator going back up to the press box afterwards that the thing that I keep taking away from this is it's felt like every single post-game press conference we've had with him, it ends with, well, I think we played a real good hockey game out there tonight, and, First period didn't go our way, but the second and the third period, I thought we played a real solid hockey game there. So I'm not too upset with the way that the guys played. I think they played a good game, and it's just like rinse repeat. Like it's as if there's this robotic kind of rehearsed shtick that he just kind of defaults into, but then like you manage to get something out of him, and like you're getting that human element out of him, which is good. I find this like cognitive disconnect between what's actually happening on the ice and the way that he kind of seems to default back to this, well, we played a good hockey game. Like, no, not really. Not at home.
Well,
there haven't been that many great efforts. There have been stretches of solid play, but like this team has gotten blown out on home ice multiple times to start the season. It's not good. And the PK, which we'll get into later, is currently at a historically bad like percentage. So no, like things aren't all hunky dory.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily sure that he's saying that specifically. I think what he's trying to say is, if you look at these games, it's not like we're playing poorly. I mean, the San Jose game aside, they played like crap in that game, and they actually
the Colorado game I didn't think was the greatest ever. I didn't have high expectations going in.
No, but you know why he's going to say it was a good game, and again, this will appease the analytics types. They did have better puck possession. I think they led in Corsi. They did have more shots on goal. I think that the Flyers' problem is twofold in that regard, though, because they've had a number of games where their advanced stats are not bad and they've lost the games, but they get too many shots blocked. So they're not getting good shots. They're not creating good enough shots, because if you're getting that many shots blocked, I mean, they had 27 blocked by the Devils on Saturday, even though they won that game. And I think it was another 21 or 22 that were blocked by Colorado. That's a lot of shots that are getting blocked, okay? That's not even shots that are missing the net entirely. Those are ones that you're taking and people are getting in front of. So it's not, maybe they're not being taken at the right time, but they also really don't get to the front of the net. You would think that with a guy like Wayne Simmons, that they would have a lot of luck into the front of the net. Now, I know they're missing James Van Riemsdyk, and he's a guy that technically would get to the front of the net. And so that's certainly an element that's missing with him not in the lineup. But I don't think he makes enough of a difference to switch these losses to wins. I think this team is probably still 4-5. Maybe they get one of these games to overtime and maybe get an extra point out of it. Who knows? But I still think they're 4-5, even with Van Riemsdyk in the lineup, because of the way they're playing defensively. So in that now I know I just switched gears on you there real fast, but so they're getting. I think what he's trying to say is we're doing okay. We're playing the style of game that we want to play for significant stretches. I thought the Colorado game, they were the better puck possession team the entire second period, and then for most of the third period. And they still, they still got behind 2-0, 3-0. They got one goal to get it to 3-1, but they never got closer. Hackstall today. Here's a great quote from him. And again, this tells me that this is a guy who's recognizing the gravity of the situation. And I'll get into what I think this all means. Hackstall today. We're a game under 500. Boy, that's mediocre at best. Now you have to back away and really look at the performances and evaluate the performances of your team. But I think if we want to be honest with ourselves, the performance of our team equals our record right now. How you like that? How you like that? So what is he doing there?
Well, I mean, it's quasi-transparent. I mean, it's showing that at least he is recognizing what the media has been writing, what the fans have been saying.
But what is he? But here's what my thing is. He's throwing this on the players.
Yeah.
He's basically said, I've harped on this for 3 years. I've implemented a system that should work. You see it work for stretches of the game, and they can't get it right. That's basically what he's saying. If we're going to internal monologue here, that's what Dave Hackstall is saying. He's saying that they can't get it right. If we want to be honest with ourselves, the performance of our team equals our record right now. You have to look at the performances and evaluate the performances. And the performance of our team equals our record.
I mean, it's pretty damning.
Yeah. And to me, that's something he would never have said in his previous 3 seasons. He never would have thrown that out there like that. So to me, that is the coach saying, and I've been there with this, okay? I'll take you back, all right? This is they got off to in the 06-07 season, which was the worst season in Flyers history. They got off to I think they were a 1-6-1 start. But before that last loss, they were in. They had gotten blown out by Buffalo. I think it was 8-1 or something ridiculous like that, 9-1. And then we flew to Florida, and we had back-to-back games, Tampa and Florida. They were on back-to-back nights. But we had a day off first in Tampa. So there's a practice in Tampa, and Ken Hitchcock's the coach. And that morning, we had talked, the night before we had talked to Ed Snyder. And Snyder put out a quote, the whole damn team stinks. He was ripping the team as he was wont to do. And so we all, we wrote it and we put it out. So that after practice, Hitchcock calls the entire press corps, which was 5 or 6 beat writers at the time, into his road office, whatever, like the office for the visiting team in Tampa's stadium, and proceeds to do this, basically what Hackstall did. And he kind of threw it on Bob Clark, who was general manager at the time, but saying, look at the players that he gave us. They can't play. This is what they're doing. You guys know me. I've had success in this league. I've won a Stanley Cup. And look at the dreck that I have to work with. And they just cannot play. They can't do it. So 2 days later, both Hitchcock and Bob Clark. Well, Hitchcock is fired, and Bob Clark, quote unquote, resigns as the general manager, and that's when we got Paul Holmgren as the new GM. But you can see, like, this is what the coach was doing. He was basically throwing his hands up, saying, "I can't do anything more with these people." And I'm starting to get a little sense that we're getting that from Dave Hackstall, because I think he's starting to recognize it. And one final thing I want to throw into this theory that I have, and then I'll let you respond. As we were walking to the post game after the Colorado loss, you and I walked by Ron Hextall talking to Bob Clark.
Yep.
And it was Bob Clark, who does not come to very many games anymore. He's still a senior advisor for the team. He's mostly in Florida most of the time, but he comes up, and he was at the game. It's funny, like, we were talking during intermission. We were talking with his daughter for a hot second, because she brought the grandkids out to see her dad, and when he's there, he's not there just because he's decided to come into town and, let me check in on the Flyers. He's there to offer advice and an opinion. And that conversation between him and Hextall did not look like a fun conversation. He did pat Hexy on the shoulder and say, "I'll see you in a couple weeks," as we walked by. But that tells me that there's even more there. Like, they're trying to figure it out. This team is internally trying to identify what the hell is wrong and who's got to fall for it. And, the players have to realize at this point, it's time to get it right, or something's going to happen. Either somebody's going to get traded, or the coach is going to get fired, or something is going to happen to make a change if something doesn't get better here over the next handful of games.
There are so many moving pieces in what you said. Trying to go back and address them, I guess, in
Go
order
ahead.
is going to be tough, but let's try. So the concept that Hackstall is now kind of putting it on the players is interesting. I do agree with that, because to me, he's a guy who's been buttoned up. I wouldn't say that the way that he approaches press conferences is Gabe Kapler-esque, because I don't think he tries to sound like the smartest guy in the room, which Kapler does try to do. But I do think that kind of putting it on the players is an interesting tactic. Now, the latter point that you made, where you kind of implied that, maybe this is him kind of publicly saying, I don't have the right guys here to make this work. At least that's how I interpreted it, that last part. It would be interesting, and it would certainly get away from that kind of all things are peaches and cream between Hackstall and Hextall. Hextall at any given moment, anytime he's given the opportunity to put a little bit of pressure on Hack, he never has. He constantly reiterates his support for him. He, goes out of his way to make it sound like he thinks that long term this is the guy who's going to bring a Stanley Cup back to Philadelphia. So the idea that, Hackstall might in some way be publicly challenging his GM to fix this is an interesting point. And I kind of come back to, well, what do we have in the minors right now that's going to be able to come in and fill this? Now, look, the team's had plenty of injuries. I mean, we'd be remiss if we didn't point out the fact that JVR has been out and will continue to be out for a few more weeks. Nolan Patrick was out for a week since we last recorded. They've had injuries. I mean, we've said all the way through training camp that Andrew McDonald coming back doesn't seem right. He came back well before he was supposed to. And I think we've said multiple times, McDonald never really looked right. I mean, he's been a healthy scratch for, well, healthy in quotes, scratch for Christian Folin, and Folin's not nothing to shake a stick at. If anything, I have to think that, doesn't Hextall go to Hextall at some point and say, look, the defense has been an absolute train wreck. And when you're giving me an injured Andrew McDonald to work with, or a, absolute trash player, no offense, but a subpar, a mediocre at best Christian Folin who can go out and have, a solid game, and then the next time falls on his face just trying to skate the puck up the ice. I mean, watch out, ice is slippery, newsflash. Does he start to think, man, maybe this would have been a better situation to have a Phil Myers? Now, Phil Myers is obviously still going to make mistakes, but if your options in this situation, and this is where I come back to the problems I had last year, I think last year was the year to really, bring up a few more of these young kids and get them seasoning last year and get them used to the NHL, because we're kind of seeing that the team has such a, I don't know, it's a lack of overall talent defensively. You can mix up the pairs all you want, but it's putting lipstick on a pig. I mean, Gudas and Sanheim hasn't been bad. I think statistically it's worked out where it's been okay.
But you know why that is? You know why that is, though? I'll just real quick. The reason that they've been as good, and I'm not trying to knock them, but the reason that they've been as good as they've been is, if you really look at the deployment, Hackstall has actually done a nice job of keeping them away from the other team's top line.
Which is fine. He kind of totally should, because when they broke up Ghost and Provi, that's, I think, something that, you'd want to have one of those guys, whichever pair they're on, you'd want them up against the top two lines, right? So, yeah, you're right. There's no disputing it. But those guys have graded out well, and I think their games kind of complement each other pretty well. But having to break up Provorov and Gostisbehere has been, I think a long time coming this season. Provorov has not looked the same. I mean, something looks off, and I can't put my finger on what it is exactly. You wonder if he caught a knock in practice at some point and he's fighting through it, but he doesn't look like the same player. Now, maybe it was the traditional Philadelphia Flyers fan base goes and puts unrealistic expectations on the kid, but I don't necessarily think that's what this is. He doesn't look right. Now, Ghost has kind of had some up and down games. They had to break that top pairing up, and I don't care which way you make this thing try to work, but you don't have enough talent there. And this comes back to the conversation that we had in the summer. Erik Karlsson was out there for the taking. He was out there to acquire, and God, does this team look different if Erik Karlsson is on it. Even somebody who's a second pair defenseman, just to come in and give a little bit of depth. They just don't have it right now, and I think that to me is the most damning thing, is that between Hextall and Hextall, these personnel decisions were made, and they don't have it. I mean, that doesn't even get to what the fourth line is, and the fact that Dale Weiss and Yori Laterra, although Laterra's played better than I think we expected him to,
so those guys Weiss.
Those guys. I was saying both of those guys. Yeah. They've been playing better, but realistically, on any other roster, are these guys even on the big club? I'm not so sure.
Well, I mean, maybe.
So it's just it was curious personnel decisions that happened this offseason, and they're kind of rearing their heads here, and I don't know why anybody's surprised. We'll get to the other guy in a little bit, but this is why we keep coming back around to, this was not the season to bring up Carter Hart. And he's faced his own challenges down in the minors that we'll get to, but like I feel like this year might be the last one that you can get away with trying to bring up some of these young players and get them actual NHL experience. Because right now, if the choice is to go through the season and try to plug holes with lower quality vets in an effort to try to make the playoffs, like that to me isn't worth it. I'd rather these young kids get experience in crunch time. I feel like this is what happened last night with the Sixers with Markelle Fultz against the Pistons. Like, you had the opportunity to get him crunch time minutes. You chose not to. You put in TJ McConnell, who is like a decent professional player. And maybe he gives you a better chance to win, but you know what he is. We know what Christian Fullen is. We know what Andrew McDonald is. We know what Radko Gudas is. And quite frankly, we know Yori Laterra and Dale Weiss are. And like, I don't know. I feel like I'm kind of done. I'm over it.
Yeah, I still, I this is where I disagree with you, because I understand the whole concept of developing players. I mean, everybody's like, oh, put the young kids in. Hockey is like baseball. It's not like football and basketball. You don't just come straight from college and start playing the pro ranks. It just is not that way. You absolutely need that development time. Yes, there are exceptions to that rule. Guys who get drafted number 1 or number 2 overall, and they're going to make the team as an 18-year-old because they're an elite talent like that. Sure, fine. But the guys further down need more time, need more seasoning. Now, I think that the greatest problem with development, and I don't want to get into this, this is not a topic here, but the greatest problem with development for hockey players is the fact that a lot of them that are in the CHL, Canadian Hockey League, which is the OHL, the Q, and Western Hockey League, those 3 leagues are the CHL. Those kids have to go back there until they're 20 years old unless they're making the NHL roster. And more oftentimes than not, they would benefit so much more in their age 18, 19 seasons to be playing in the AHL. And it would make, you would then get the younger kid, like what the fans call for. We want to see these young players. They would then be able to play in the NHL at the age that you want to see them at. But what ends up happening is that the CHL has this long-standing rule that, because, and again, it's for their own financial gain for their teams, that if the players are not being used in the NHL, they have to go back to the CHL. They cannot go to the AHL, and that's the problem. So what ends up happening is these kids continue to play against, in their age 19 and age 20 seasons, they're playing against 16-year-olds in a lot of cases. And of course they're better than them. Of course they're going to put up great numbers in junior, and everybody's going to think, oh my God, yeah, look at how good that guy's playing. Why isn't he in the NHL? This is ridiculous. They're playing these veteran guys. I'm telling you, there needs to be a development time. And all of these players that you want to see, I'll tell you right now, and it's interesting, Michael Vorobiev looks like he's going to get back into the lineup tomorrow in Boston, Thursday in Boston.
After 3 straight scratches.
Yeah.
After starting the season as the 3C.
And I don't get it. They're putting him back in 3C. And I'm like, all right, well, I guess they're taking Jordan Wheel out. I guess he's pissed at Wheel because of the penalties. Well, no, they're not taking Wheel out. They're moving Wheel to the wing.
Great.
On the third line. So I think what ends up happening is that somebody else is going to play that 4th line role, and it very well might be Oscar Lindblom. I think might actually be down there because I think Lawton's played well enough to probably get those second line minutes with Patrick and Voracek. I don't think you're going to stunt Lawton just to get Vorobiev back in the lineup. So I don't understand it. To me, I think he's a guy that could use a little bit more time in the AHL. I just do, and I would not be surprised if at some point he goes back down there, because there's some guys down there who are playing good hockey at the AHL level who you might sit there and say, yeah, this guy could do better in the NHL than what we're getting from Michael Vorobiev. But so that's why I'm okay. Now look, if Yuri Laterra and Dale Weiss were playing terrible,
which they're not,
right? You know what I'm saying? If they were playing awful, like they were last year. then I would kind of agree with you. Be like, look, you can't get worse. Right? They're bad. So if they're bad players and they're not playing well, then it cannot get worse to use the younger players. But the fact that they're doing a good job, I'm okay with keeping them in to try and win. They're only 9 games into the season. This should be a playoff team. Now, I don't think it's in a top end playoff team, but it should be a playoff team in this conference, and it's not right now. And a lot of this doesn't necessarily fall on the young kids or the veterans who are playing like fourth line roles. The mistakes that are being made by guys higher up the lineup.
Well, Giroux had that one play where he failed to, what was it? It was off a face-off. It was an offensive zone face-off at the blue, right? And he got the puck out at the blue line. He whiffed on a shot, or a play in, and it got picked, goes right down the ice, and it's a breakaway goal, and Elliott gets beat, was it 6-side high? I mean, it's just been a constant stream of poor play, poor decisions. Now, the one thing that I will say is, I said before that like Ghost has kind of had an up and down season. I think Ghost and Nolan Patrick maybe should be commended after the last game. I thought they had a few good stretches against Colorado where they were keeping the puck in the zone, especially in like the latter stages of the second period and definitely in the third period. Those guys were all over the ice trying to keep it in, but they've had up and down seasons. I mean, we said Patrick's had an injury. Ghost has, been all around with different defensive pairs. I don't know, man. Like, it's going down and seeing the apathy that I think that's already set in with the fan base is disheartening. Like, we've talked in the past about the fact that like the ticket issue and the way that tickets are sold and the price of tickets, that place has not been full yet. I mean, I would say that the highest percentage of people we've seen is what, maybe 80? The lower bowl is patchy. The upper level, oddly enough, I feel like is more full.
Well, the one thing I will
cheaper.
The one thing you got to be careful with when you say that, and it may look 80% full or 85% full, but a lot of those tickets are sold. They're owned by companies, and they just nobody's coming.
Okay, so let me rephrase that.
Yeah,
80 to 85% of the seats are being occupied by a human being.
Yeah.
Which means that 10 to 15% of that home ice advantage don't exist. And that to me is part of the problem. Like the Flyers haven't given much for the fans to cheer for in any home game this year, right? I mean, against Vegas, it was a Marc-Andre Fleury show. They could get nothing going whatsoever. Against San Jose, it was an absolute disgrace from the bat. The only good thing that happened in the San Jose game was Gritty coming out of the rafters. Like, let's be honest. And you can even argue that Gritty was the best part of the Colorado game, whether it was tackling the people in the sumo costumes in between plays, or the fact that Gritty was the star on the T-shirt giveaway at that game. Like, Gritty has ended up being the MVP of 2 games, right? And so, I don't know. I'm finding myself, I guess I have to switch up the role and switch up the way that I kind of approach these games, because usually I come at it from a fan's perspective, and then it was the home opener. Frank Saravalli got on me for cheering. It wasn't really a cheer. It was a come on, guys. But I just want to see some good hockey, and I'd like to see that the hometown team is gonna meet the energy. But quite frankly, I feel like Wells Fargo Center has been dead in practically every game. I don't feel home ice advantage. I have to imagine, and we've heard it elsewhere, that there are other arenas in the NHL that do a much better job of putting together some kind of home ice advantage. And I don't know if it's that fans have just kind of resigned themselves to the fact that this team is mediocre, and that because it continues to trot out a lot of the same guys, it trots out the same coaching staff that, by the way, includes Ian LaPerriere, who's overseen 3 of the worst penalty kills in the last 5 years in the NHL, and a historically awful penalty kill thus far, although it's a small sample size this year. I don't know, if you're a Flyers fan, like, do you really want to go and spend the $120 to sit in the lower level? I'm not so sure. Like, I don't blame these people for not coming. I don't blame them if they've bought the season tickets and they're not showing up. The team hasn't really given them anything to come out and see. Like, even to that end, we have to admit, hockey's not a top 2 sport in the country, right? Probably not even top 3. It's a sport that you really have to fall in love with. And to that end, like, few weeks ago, and you'll laugh at this, but like a few weeks ago, Kevin Kincaid and I were really big on trying to tell people that weren't soccer fans that, the Union were playing in the U.S. Open Cup final. They were playing really well, and if there was ever a time to watch them, it was that game. It was going to be nationally televised. Like, get in, and like maybe this would help you, find a reason to watch the Union. They went out, and they absolutely got slaughtered by Houston. So kind of fast forward to the Flyers season here, they get on national TV, they get killed. I mean, absolutely brutalized. And when, you're a fringe Philadelphia fan and you don't really watch the Flyers, you check in, you look at what their record is and decide if you want to go to a game or if you want to turn them on. Like, they're 4-5. Like, why would you? You know what I mean? So I feel like they're missing out on another opportunity here to catch some of the fans and catch some fringe fans and pull them in for the season. And it's just a mess. I feel like from top to bottom, this whole thing is a mess right now. It was almost as much of a mess as that stream of consciousness I just spewed.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's interesting because we've heard Brian Elliott say a few times, use the word structure, and tries to back out of it a couple times. But believe me, when a guy says that the team's lacking structure in front of him, it is. He's not. He's looking at it and saying, "Geez, my numbers are going to look awful." And not that he's been great. I mean, he was really good the first couple games of the season, kind of mediocre for a couple games, not great against Florida, mediocre again. And I thought he was pretty good Monday against Colorado, even though he allowed 3 goals, but one's a breakaway, one's a power play goal. That was pretty ugly coverage. He made 2 big saves before the goal finally went in because nobody was defending anything. And then one goal that was kind of meh. I mean, maybe he could have had it, maybe not. But still, it was, again, a breakdown. If you looked at my story on Crossing Broad, there was a real breakdown by 4 different players on that goal. So, when he's saying that, it's mostly because he's recognizing that what's happening in front of him is not right. So, anyway.
Well, speaking of not right, let's get off the big team for a little bit, and let's talk about a guy that plenty of fans were clamoring for at the beginning of the season. And that, of course, was Carter Hart, who a lot of people thought should have been up with the team, perhaps even as the backup goalie, before they decided to finagle their way into getting Cal Pickard on the team. Carter Hart's been bad. I mean, I don't know a better way to say it. He's been suboptimal. So far this season in the AHL, he's played 4 games. He's got a .428 goals against average. That's for those keeping track at home, that is an .869 save percentage.
Yeah, not good.
I'm sorry, .865 save percentage.
And that's
not good.
That's in
the AHL.
AHL, right? So it's not even in the NHL. So what's the difference? Look, it's what we said. You can dominate junior hockey all you want. And he's still going to be probably a good player and a really good goalie in the NHL in the future. But this is why you don't throw a 20-year-old goalie into the NHL. Because if he's struggling in the AHL, what would he be doing in the NHL? Especially behind the crap defense that the Flyers have been playing in front of their goaltending to begin with. I mean, that's the thing. So, my concern with Carter Hart, I don't have a problem with the fact that he's gotten off to a bad start. Look, it's only 4 games, and it's his first taste of pro hockey. He's going to be fine. I'm not worried about that at all, and I'm not even worried about the statistics. That means nothing to me right now. What bothers me is this. So he's 1-2-1 in those 4 games. Okay, first game he plays, he actually wins. After the game, he's there talking to the media, and believe it or not, the Phantoms actually get some pretty good media coverage for an AHL team. They have multiple outlets that are there to cover their games, which is pretty cool. As someone who used to cover the AHL and most nights was there by myself, it's pretty cool to see. But anyway, the gathered media covering the Phantoms talked to Carter Hart after his first game. He wins, and he had some great things to say. After his second game, which was a loss, the media was told Carter's not available after the game. Okay. You kind of sit there and say, well, why? I mean, he should be available, but okay. It just happens one time. No big deal. The next game, he loses. He's not available to talk to the media again. All right. Now it's getting a little ridiculous. Okay. The next game, he loses in, I think it was a shootout. It was either overtime, but I think it was a shootout. Loses again. This time, he's not, the media is not told he's not available, but Carter says, I have some people here. I'll come back and talk to you guys after I go see them. And then he never comes back. I'm not sure if this is Carter Hart, if this is a Ron Hextall, ordinance to kind of keep him sheltered a little bit from media coverage. I don't know what the story is. I have not been able to glean from anybody why it's happening, but it can't happen. And I'm not just saying that because, oh my God, the media is getting screwed. No. I don't care if he comes out and says nothing. The fact is that you're hiding your young goalie after you're shielding him after he loses. He needs to be able to face that. That's not a growth point for him to not have to answer for a bad game. So, when he had a bad game, when he played for Team Canada, if he had a bad game, which he never did, really, but, I mean, they would have made him talk, right? He would have had, and you'd want to talk about media scrutiny, like every writer in Canada, the entire country would be at that tournament and asking him questions, not just, 3 or 4 guys up at Lehigh Valley. So it's not a good look. And I don't know who's making that call, but it's got to be rectified. He's got to be able to say, yeah, tonight wasn't a good game. He's going to have that, That's part of growing up. It's part of becoming a professional player, is to be able to, address the media after you have a bad game. I mean, they're going to praise you when you have a good game, and they're going to rip you when you have a bad game. You have to be able to talk about both.
I really hope he's been taking notes on how Brian Elliott's been handling himself with the media. I think, if nothing else, Elliott's been an awesome quote. And he's also just been a guy who, game after game, comes out and really kind of faces the music to the media. And I'm not totally sure, because I haven't been at it that long, but I have to think that kind of thing plays well with the rest of the media crew. I don't think anybody's been overly critical of him in the questions they're asking. I think people are asking him fair things. And, the structure thing, I think, is the one thing that, after the San Jose game, that he let slip. And I don't think it played well with Hextall. Because in the immediate aftermath, when we went out to Hextall's press conference, somebody mentioned, I don't remember who it was, somebody mentioned the fact that Elliott had said that the structure wasn't good. And it seemed to piss off Hextall, to put it lightly. I'm in a spot right now where I feel like Elliott's going to continue to be honest, and I'm wondering if it's going to get him benched. But at the same time, I don't think that the option that they have behind him is any better. I'm honestly in a spot right now where I'm kind of wondering if the team is just treading water until Alex Lyon comes back.
No, it's not even that. Neuver.
Now, if they know they can't rely on Neuver, why are we even we can't talk about that? That's not even a
he's on a rehab assignment right now. He's playing at the moment as we're recording. He's playing for the Phantoms right now. Not Carter Hart, not Alex Lyon, not Anthony Stolars. Michael Neuver is playing for the Phantoms in a rehab start, which tells you that they realize they need to at least try and get him into games and see if he can stay healthy.
Spare me.
That's what they're doing. This is what's happening.
Spare me. I don't need this again. I don't need to see Michael Neuver go out there again. I really don't.
He's going to.
He's going to roll his ankle coming out of the locker room today. Okay? The guy's made of glass.
I'm going to make a prediction. He plays Saturday.
He might. And honestly, Anthony, what good is it going to do? This defense has been so bad. You could have put an in his prime Patrick Waugh behind them, and I don't really know if it works.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe that's a little bit hyperbolic, but still, they have not played fundamentally sound defense in front of any goalie. It hasn't happened.
No, But the goalie and the goalie's
leaving the far post totally unattended, not checking a shoulder, looking for any kind of a latecomer or anybody coming around the back of the net, and just like watching the puck get deposited time after time after time. It's been infuriating.
Yeah, understandable. I get it.
Which is what, like,
but
again,
the goalies,
that's why it's good that it's not Carter Hart, because all you do is crush the kids.
Yeah.
And you would crush his spirit. You would probably screw him up mentally. And then, of course, you get the fan base, on him. He's supposed to be the second coming. Why is this happening to us? Why can't we have nice things? Although, in fairness, if fans were really checking in on Carter Hart's stats in the minors, they'd obviously be alarmed. And
Yeah.
it did happen. We've had multiple people on Twitter while we're at it who have asked about Carter Hart. So go ahead and then I'll come back to that.
Well, no, all I was going to say is there is also this. The goalies do have to, when, they have to save the team sometimes. I mean, that's what they're there for. Hockey is a game of mistakes, and so mistakes are going to happen. You just want to make them less frequently than your opponent. But the fact of the matter is that the goalie has to be able to, at some point, make that big save for...
He's got to pick up the slack for his defense.
Yeah, he does a little bit. I mean, you can't blame him when they give up a goal because he's, look, I give you the first goal, the power play goal. He made two really good saves before they scored because nobody cleared anybody away. Nobody played the body. Nobody played the puck. Christian Fulham was throwing himself onto the ice for no apparent reason. Provorov was caught watching the paint dry.
He saw that Gritty really got a good reaction from the crowd, and he thought, hey, I could do that too.
Yeah, Couturier was out of position. I mean, there's a lot of
fundamental things that are going wrong.
Yeah.
These aren't like huge things that need to get corrected. These are just mental lapses. The team, I think the best way to put it is the team just looks mentally out of it from the second they come out of the locker room. They actually, a few of the guys were quoted. I think it was Haig was the one who I think gave the most revealing comment to that extent after the Colorado game. Just kind of that, it's been a constant conversation is that they need to have better starts, but they really need to pick it up. Like they need to match the intensity that they know they need to have, and it's just not there. I don't know. Is there anything else you really want to hit? Is there anything that's like? I mean, I feel like we're just going to kind of go in circles about like the things that are going wrong. Like there's. Like if we did a film breakdown right now, we would have so many things to go with, and they're all just fundamentals. It's stupid hockey. It's the best way to put it. It's just not fundamentally sound, and they're playing like dweebazoids. I don't have a better way to put it.
Did you just say dweebazoids on this show?
I sure did. Yes, I did.
Oh, Russ, you just got us a 3-star review.
Oh, I can do that on my own just for existing here. We do have a new 5-star review. We'll get to that in a little bit.
Oh, good.
Can I just say real quick? The penalty kill's been a disaster.
Yeah, let's talk about it. You said, is there anything else? Here you go.
So
you wrote about it.
Well, let's talk about the PK for a second because it needs to get addressed. So the PK, I pulled the stats from the last 5 years, and I know that they're all small sample sizes. I get it. The 18-19 season, but it's
for this season is a small. The other ones aren't.
It's still 10% of your season, give or take. When I pulled the numbers, so be that as it may. If you look back at the last 5 years, if you were to take all teams in the last 5 years, and obviously that number's changed because of expansion, there are 152 penalty kills that you would rank. So that's every NHL team that has existed in the last 5 years. If you took each season's penalty kills, so like the 14-15 Flyers, the 15-16 Flyers, 16-17 Flyers, do that same thing for like the Devils and the Avalanche and whoever else, whatever. There were 152 penalty kills that you can rank, right? Here are the rankings for the last 5 years for the Flyers. The 2014-15 Flyers finished or would have ranked 125 out of 152 penalty kills. That's awful. Dave Haxtell's first year as coach, they actually jumped up. Their penalty kill was much better. It was 85th out of 152 in the last 5 years. So that's actually the highest it's ever been under Haxtell. The next year it regressed. The PK regressed down to them being 99th out of 152 penalty kills in the last 5 years. Last season, so there's a big sample size. Last season, they finished with such a low PK percentage, they would have ranked 136 out of 152 teams. But it gets worse because as of going into the Colorado game, This year's penalty kill.
I thought you did it. I thought you did it after the Colorado
No.
game.
It was just because I didn't have the stats available to me when I finally posted it. Going into that game, they were ranked 150 out of 152 penalty kills. After the Colorado game, this is the thing I didn't put up. They actually dropped because they gave up a penalty. They gave up a power play goal. Colorado went 1 for 3. They actually dropped to 151 out of 152. But it gets worse, Anthony. Would you like me to get it worse? It gets worse. With a currently sitting on a 68.8% penalty kill percentage. In 1,060 penalty kills, so every single team from now all the way back to the 1977-1978 season when they began tracking penalty kill percentage, your Philadelphia Flyers in the 2018-2019 season, if we were to stack all 1,060 penalty kills that have existed in the last 31 years, your Philadelphia Flyers, out of 1,060 penalty kills, currently rank 1,057. They are the 4th worst penalty kill percentage since the stat has been tracked in the NHL.
That's 41 years, by the way.
41. Oh, God, I said 31. You're right. 41 years of them tracking penalty kill percentage. They are the 4th worst penalty kill of all time. Small sample size I get, but 68.8% doesn't cut it.
No, that's terrible. 68.8 is terrible.
So, speaking of cutting it, how has Ian LaPerriere not been cut from his role as the guy in charge of the penalty kill? Again, over the last 3 seasons, 99th, 136th, 150th.
Yeah.
That doesn't cut it.
It's a fair question. It's a fair question. I think this reverts back to the oversight thing, Russ. I mean, Ron Hextall's an incredibly patient general manager, so he's not changing anything with his coaching staff. And who's above Ron Hextall? We don't know. I mean, Paul Holmgren technically is the president, so I mean he would be the next guy up. But I don't think he's under any pressure from Dave Scott, who's the Comcast guy who is Paul's boss. I don't think he's getting any pressure from there to make a change. So it's really where we're at. I mean, it's just there's no. Look, if you have a job and you're doing your job and you're making good money at your job and there's no oversight, you're gonna get a little lazy, right? You might get a little lazy, and that's kind of what's happened here is that it's like a trickle down effect. That you know what I mean. I love Lappy. Okay, as a guy, I mean, great guy, great human being. It's well known that I wrote the nomination for him when he won the whatchamacallit award the year he didn't even play the Masterton Award for dedication to hockey. So I mean that goes to show you like the relationship that I have with the guy and how I feel about the guy. That said, yeah. I mean, how is he still in charge of the penalty kill? Look, I understand you want to keep him on the team. You think there's value to him as a coach, like that players do actually learn things from him. Okay, fine, but maybe you say, yeah, you're not in charge of the penalty kill anymore. At least that makes that change, wakes the players up and says, you know what, we're not doing something right. But the fact of the matter is that they just keep letting the same thing happen every game. And it's you could almost feel it. I mean, you're in that building. You could almost feel it when they take a penalty. There's this feeling of dread that fills that building. Like, yeah, they're probably going to give up a goal here.
Yep.
Right? So the players have to feel it. If we feel it up in the rafters, they have to feel it down on the ice. So, I mean, there's no confidence in themselves to do that well. And if you really go back and look at that penalty kill and break it down into these 9-game chunks, like you say, well, 9 is a small sample size, and it is. But I bet you if you did, and we don't have time to do it right now, but maybe before the next time we record, if you go back and look, if you break them down season by season in chunks of 9 games, and you could do that on hockeyreference.com, I would bet you that you don't have many, if any, 9-game stretches that are this bad. I'm serious with that, Russ. I mean, 68% is really poor.
Yep.
It's really poor. I mean, you go through what I'm saying is go through not go through every team in the league, but just go through the Flyers in the last 5 years, penalty kill, and do chunks of 9 games and see if you can find something that's worse than 68%. I say it's hard to find one that's that bad.
I'll have to pull it for next episode.
Yeah.
It seems like it's gonna be a lot of work.
No.
But I'll do it. I will do it, Anthony. I will do it for the people.
It's only 5 years worth of stuff.
Okay.
Do we have any positives?
Yeah, the popcorn's good in the press box. I've enjoyed the press box layout. Can I explain to the people what it looks like?
Go ahead.
Is that okay? Is that fair game?
Go
Get
ahead.
off the elevator. So take this trip with me, ladies and gents. You get off the elevator at the balcony. You walk straight forward and you are greeted by some lovely security personnel. You make a slight left, and there is a soda machine. There's coffee. There's candy. The candy bar is fantastic. Got some M&Ms. I think they have the almond M&Ms. I have not ventured that far yet.
I usually go Reese's Pieces.
The Reese's Pieces. You know what? I'm afraid to do Reese's Pieces. I feel like my brain can't wrap my head around the fact that they're peanut butter and not chocolate. And my brain wants M&Ms, and I give peanut butter, and it doesn't work. Anyway, some M&Ms, and then there's the popcorn Johnski. Now,
you forgot the super pretzels.
Oh, you're right. There's super pretzels. Sorry, don't leave those out. Super pretzels with 2 kinds of mustard. Got the spicy brown, the deli brown, and you got the nice French's yellow mustard, and then you got the popcorn. And every single game, I fill up a giant box of popcorn. I grab a little cup of M&Ms, and I usually go through about 2 cups of coffee while we're there. And every single time, I end up making a mess. Now, I clean up after myself. There is a reasonable mess that I think you're allowed to make if you're eating popcorn. Obviously, your hands are going to be a mess. There's butter. But I think it was the second home game that we were at. It looked like there was a murder scene of popcorn. It looked like somebody had been eating popcorn, and then a sniper took me out from across the way. And it was because the box wasn't properly locked on the bottom. And I don't usually get that many looks from anybody. I think most people just kind of leave me alone. They don't know who I am, and that's fine. But that was the night where a few people kind of looked over, and there were some smirks. There were some shocked faces, and they're like, this guy's a slob. And I'm sitting there like, why am I getting all this popcorn all over myself? Like, it doesn't make any sense. I'm not like reaching in and grabbing huge handfuls. Why do I keep losing a few pieces? I flipped the box over a little bit and saw that the whole bottom was out, and it was awful. Anyway, press box is nice. The press people, fine. I have no problems yet. I have no real qualms. I did say on Crossing Broadcast that I find the fact that some people ask the same exact question to every single player and the coach who are made available after games is slightly annoying, but what are you going to do, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Are you going to address the suits thing here, or are you going to wait for that and Crossing Broadcast to kind of...
You know what? Let's address it now.
Okay, go ahead.
So I get down to the first game, and it was a dress down day at work. So I'm wearing jeans, right? And I think I had jeans and a sweater. And I said, you know what, Anthony, I need to know what you wear because I don't want to stick out like a sore thumb. Like, what are you going to wear? And so we color coordinated. It was great. That's not true. So Anthony just goes, well, I'm wearing jeans and I'm going to wear a sweater. So that's fine. So we're going to look nice. So I don't want to like look like a schlub, and I don't want to slum it. And I'm thinking, all right, well, I know that some people are probably going to wear khakis, maybe a button down, whatever. That's fine. I get into the media dinner, and everybody's in a suit. I feel like I walked into Goodfellas. And then I see, well, they did have the carving station. That was nice. That has nothing to do with Goodfellas or anything. But there was a nice carving station for the media dinner, and I enjoyed it very much. So thank you to that guy. But everybody's in a suit. I'm like, and this is where I get kind of thrown off by the whole thing. We've been down at Voorhees. Nobody's dressed up. People are wearing jeans. Life is good. Everybody's acting like a normal human being. You get down to a game, everybody's in a suit. So then, because it's the first time, I'm like, I don't actually know what the press box looks like yet. I don't know what the setup is. I don't know. Are we around fans? Like, is that why everybody's wearing a suit? No, you don't. You go from the the ice level or basement level or whatever, up to the press box. Eventually, you go back down to that bottom floor, go to the locker room, go to Hacksall's press conference, go back up to the press box. Well, after everybody has emptied out of the arena, there's no fan interaction. Why is everybody wearing a suit? It bothers me. It's like, is everybody just trying to outclass each other? Is it everybody needs to wear a suit in case they're on the camera and they can wave to their mom? Like, I don't get it. I don't understand. Now, I will wear sweaters. I might wear some button-downs. I think I might wear a nice pair of slacks or khakis, but I'm not wearing a suit. I refuse, unless the Flyers tell me I need to, in which case I will be happy to wear a suit. But for now, I will not wear a suit.
No, you don't have to. You'll never have to wear a suit. It's ridiculous. The story, just to kind of let you know why this happens, is this is an old Canadian tradition, and this is something that back in the old days when, it was just the original 6, which, by the way, there was only 2 Canadian teams back then. It was 4 American teams, 2 Canadian teams. But back then, what you used to do is you used to dress in a suit to cover games. And that was, I think, more a professional thing. I think being a member of the media back in the old days was, shirt and tie or jacket and tie kind of thing. I mean, if you look at old baseball press box photos, you see the same thing. So, this was not germane to hockey, but it was a thing that was maintained once the media kind of became a little bit more casual in other sports. It maintained in hockey, primarily because it was a thing that they did in Canada. When the Flyers came into the NHL in the 60s, Ed Snyder's goal was to make the Flyers like a Canadian team. So to make hockey as important in Philadelphia as it was in the Canadian cities. And he succeeded in that in so many ways. But the way, one of the things is that he had asked that the media covering the team be dressed nicely. And a lot of times that had to stem from if the media was traveling with the players, with the team. They wanted, the team was always in suits, so they wanted the media, to dress the same so it looked like everybody was kind of in sync with one another. So that was kind of a thing. And that never changed. Like, that kind of just continued. And so as new people would start covering the team, you would see that the older, guys who were covering, oh, geez, they're wearing a suit. I must have to wear a suit. And that was pretty much for everybody. And, I started covering the team about 18 years ago, and I'm like, I ain't wearing a suit. I'm not wearing a suit. So I'm not saying that I was the only one or the first one, but I certainly maintained it for 18 years, except with the exception of when I actually worked for the Flyers. They required that you wore a suit as an employee of the team. So I did wear it for a couple of seasons there when I worked for the team. But as a member of the media, no, I never wore a suit for any reason whatsoever. The only time I ever wore a suit was when I presented the award for at the end of the season. They give out all the team awards, and they give out the class guy award, the Yannick Dupree award, and it's usually a member of the beat, one of the beat writers goes out onto the ice and presents the award. I did it twice. No, 3 times. 3 times I did it. Once Peter Forsberg, Danny Briere, Brian Boucher. So 3 times I've presented that award on the ice. So all 3 times I had to wear a suit for photo op. But that's it. I mean, other than that, I've always dressed down. So much so, it became such a running joke that Sean Tilger, who is the chief operating officer for the Flyers at this point, one year for Halloween, dressed as me. And he showed up in the press box in jeans and a button down, and he had the little press pass on hanging around his neck, and he had a little tape recorder and a notepad, and he thought it was funny that he was me for Halloween. So I mean, that's how I guess many people noticed it, that I was like the one guy out of all the beat guys who would not wear a jacket and tie. Like, I didn't feel the need for it. So anyway, that's the long-winded story about how that kind of came to be and why it still exists, I guess, in some capacity.
Are you ready for an iTunes review and an edition of Who's That Flyer?
Are we doing that first, or are we getting questions from Twitter?
You want some Twitter questions? I can use some Twitter questions. That's fine. Twitter questions. Here we go. Joe Stringer, 3 questions. Oh, I don't know if we'd go with this. No, I'm sorry. Oh, his avatar looks like another guy's. Okay, never mind. Joe Stringer has 1 question. Who's in charge of Hextall? Who is above him to step in and say we need a change? I feel like there is no one around to hold him accountable.
Yeah, I mean,
kind of answered that.
Yeah, sort of just answered that. Paul Holmgren is the direct boss for Ron Hextall, and then Paul Holmgren's boss is Dave Scott, who would technically be the former Ed Snyder role. Obviously doesn't have as much of a personal investment in the Flyers that Ed Snyder did. Ergo, I don't think that they're unless they're seeing something affect the bottom line. I don't think that you're really going to have Dave Scott intervene with what's going on the ice, because he's not a hockey guy, and so that's part of the problem. So anyway,
okay. That's
by the
one
way,
question.
By the way, before we go on to the next question, just to update, since we mentioned it earlier, that Phantoms game is now officially over. The Phantoms did win 7-3. Michael Neuvirth, 31 saves, 34 shots faced. So
Look at you, Michael Neuvirth. Wow.
Yeah. Anyway,
that's exciting. Here he comes, Michael Neuvirth, back to give you mediocre play and goal. Okay. I.W. Johnston had 2 questions. The Flyers defensively have been bad. One spot I've noticed is Provorov. Am I the only one seeing this? I love him. He's a player, but the season is so far off. Is he injured?
I don't think he's injured. I don't. I asked a couple people and they've said no. I think it's interesting. Like, was it you that said he's finally hitting his sophomore slump in his 3rd season?
I think I said it to you in the box.
Yeah, it might be. It just might be. Might have just kind of hit a little bit of a wall, and he's got to get through it. I mean, there's no doubt about it. He was better against Colorado. He didn't have a bad game against Colorado. I mean, he didn't have a great game, but he didn't have a bad game. So, like, I look at that as progress. So we'll see. We'll see if he can start stringing a few together and get back to being the player that he was. I'm not worried. I think he will get there, but certainly a good portion of the problem with the Flyers so far in 9 games has been the fact that Ivan Provorov has not been himself.
Okay. Next question. Dun, 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 dun. Steve Appleman says, "What's going on with the power play? I saw the Flyers were one of the tops in the league at drawing minor penalties, but can't seem to really cash in on their opportunities. Is it just the setup, or just bad luck that will eventually turn around?"
Yeah, I mean, they're 1 for their last 14, which is not a great, number, but power plays go through stretches like that all the time. I thought that they were actually pretty good for the, before this 1 for 14. I thought that they were really solid. I thought they've even had a number of shifts, even in the last few games, where they've had good pressure, just didn't score. I thought against Colorado, or actually go back to the Devils game, the number 1 unit in the last 2 games has been a little stagnant, a little predictable, maybe. The number 2 unit's been a lot better. Konechny scored a goal for them against the Devils. It was the first time the number 2 power play scored for them. So they've been a little bit more creative than the top unit. But that top unit, I think, has gotten to a point where you kind of know what's coming with them. So unless either Voracek or Giroux makes like this brilliant, unbelievable pass to set somebody up for a goal, we're not really seeing the production out of them right now, but they've gone through this before and have adjusted and fixed it. I think it's a good power play, and I think it'll be fine.
All right, iTunes review, and then we'll do Who's That Flyer.
Okay.
By the way, it's 2 players, so get your mind ready for that.
Oh boy.
All right, so iTunes review, 5-star review. Thank you so much to Darren Warwick band staff. Best insight into Flyers and hockey, 5 stars. Yes. First is a shout out to Russ from Matt Tenalia and the Warwick band staff. We're all big fans. I've been listening from the beginning, and this is the best insight I've received from any media outlet that covers the Flyers. Pat yourself on the back there, Anthony. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Get it.
Thank you.
Anthony provides a great balance between criticism and praise of the team. He knows when the team is underachieving and isn't afraid to let us know, but he also provides the proper analysis when the team is playing well. Russ provides a great voice as to what a fan of the team would be thinking and bounces that off of Anthony. The conversation that comes from that is second to none. Great work, Russ and Anthony. Keep up the great work. Well, thank you. Thank you, Darren, of the Warwick Band staff. Thank you so much. It's
Oh,
exciting.
by the way, you want a positive? I mean, since he points out we didn't have very many positives, but I did briefly mention Sanheim and Gudis. I think Travis Sanheim has really taken a leap forward from where he was last year. Yeah, I mean, look, he still makes mistakes. I pointed one out and got killed for it on Twitter because he's playing well, but he still makes mistakes that almost lead to goals or do lead to goals that he's got to fix. He's got to correct. He overcommits sometimes in the defensive zone to one side or the other, and then he gets caught out of position. And sometimes he stands up too far to the blue line and gets caught flat-footed. Those things will get corrected as the more he plays and the more minutes he plays. And then on the offensive side, now you're starting to see the good in his game on the offensive side. Why he was a first-round pick. He still, though, tries to make plays sometimes that he shouldn't make, and it could lead to odd man rushes the other way. He's still got to be a little bit smarter about where he's passing the puck and when he's passing the puck, when he kind of pinches down, because he can't get caught deep, make a bad pass, and then you got a 3-on-1 the other way. So there's still a couple things in his game that do need to get fixed, but he is a far better defenseman right now than he was even at the end of last year. So there's some positive for you.
Leave it to you to take a positive and then poop all over it. Thanks, Anthony. Thanks for
Go ahead.
It would be you. It would be you who says that. It would be you who
Who's
points
that
down a
flyer?
negative. All right, who's that flyer? It's actually a double edition. So I mentioned the fact that the Flyers PK would have ranked 1,057 out of 1,060 penalty kills in recorded history. The second worst Flyers team on the PK of all time was the 81-82 Flyers, who would have ranked 1,029 out of 1,060. Oof. So this question is based on the 1981-82 Philadelphia Flyers. Don't look it up.
I won't.
Who led the team in plus-minus, and who had the worst plus-minus on the 81-82 Flyers?
Wow. Well, that's an era when scoring was like really outrageous. Geez, who was? So you said who's the best and who's the worst? Is that what I gotta figure out?
Best and worst plus minus on the 81-82 Flyers.
Okay.
One of the answers I think is pretty easy, and then one's gonna be a little bit trickier.
If I had to go with the best, I would probably still go, even though he was getting toward the end of his career, I would probably still go with Bobby Clark.
Ding, 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 ding.
Yeah. Okay.
You got either of the two.
Yeah, I figured that was the easier one. I mean, I know he scored. I don't know how many points he had that year, but I figured he probably scored enough that he was got a good plus. Who was the worst? Oh, geez.
Here's why it's going to be hard. The guy only played 6 seasons in the NHL. His first season was in 78-79. He technically ended his career in 83-84. He only played 12 games that season. He played those 12 games were for Edmonton. Played 5 seasons for the Flyers.
In
In 81-82, he only put up 13 total points. He had 5 goals, 8 assists.
Oh, well, that goes against what I was just going to say Ben Wilson, but that's not right because Ben Wilson put up points.
Ben Wilson finished 16th on the team in plus minus that year with a +5.
Okay. Glenn Cochrane?
Glenn Cochrane is also incorrect.
Oh.
Was he on that team? Yeah, he was 4th in plus minus at +19.
Oh, he was good.
He was.
Okay.
If I give you initials, will it help?
Maybe.
TG.
Tom Gorance.
You looked that up.
No,
Yes, you did.
I got it wrong.
Ladies and gentlemen, Tom Gorance is correct. Anthony SanFilippo, he nailed it.
I did not nail it. You got to give me initials, and I got wrong the first 2 times.
Well, you know what? The guy only played 5 seasons and 12 games in a 6th.
Yeah.
So Tom Gorance is correct. Tom Gorance and Bobby Clark. It's the only time you'll ever hear those guys mentioned together. All right, anything else before we head out?
No, I got nothing else.
So for those who are unaware, this weekend the Flyers are playing at home 1:00 game on Saturday, and then they go out on a massive road trip. What is it
Yeah,
next?
5 games.
Five
Five
game
game road.
road swing. I don't know. Do we predict until next game what we think this stretch is going to look like? They've got they're at Boston on Saturday.
I don't.
No, sorry, they're at Boston on Thursday.
Thursday. Yeah, no.
Home against the Islanders, then at Anaheim, at Kings, at Sharks, at Coyotes. Oof. Woof.
I'll say they go 2-3-1.
Wow. What are the two
those
wins?
6 games. The Islanders, who stink, and I think they might win one of those. Well, maybe Arizona.
Okay.
Or they could win one of those California games. I mean, maybe they go 3-2-1. I don't think they beat San Jose because San Jose just we saw the disparity between those two teams on home opener. Anaheim's a pretty good squad. The Kings have been playing terrible hockey, so that might be one they have an opportunity to steal. And Arizona's better, but they're still not great. So I don't know. There's one in there that they win, one in there that they lose in overtime, and 2 losses. They won't beat Boston tomorrow, but they'll beat the Islanders on Saturday. So there's 2-3-1 in the next 6 games.
If I say they go 1-4-1, how would that make you feel?
Yeah, that's not good.
I know.
That's not
I
good.
know it's not.
Yeah.
I'm looking at this and I'm not seeing a lot of reasons to be hopeful right now. I'm not trying to be a downer.
Is 2-3-1 hopeful? It's losing.
Yeah, I mean,
4 out of 6.
it's a West Coast swing. I don't think
Still losing.
How often do you go out west and come back with a winning record? Honestly,
They did it last year, I think,
they
as
did.
a matter of fact.
I think it was later in the season, right? But yeah, with the injuries they have right now and the fact that they're still shuffling and the fact that the defense is so bad, like I just don't know. I really don't. I'm upset.
Well, we'll see. Look, I'm the optimistic one. Take note of that, people on Twitter.
Wow. What has happened? The Flyers are the only team that could make this reversal of fortune. Anyway, go check out the other shows on the Crossing Broad Podcast Network, including Crossing Broadcast, Crossed Up, a Phillies podcast. You're obviously checking out Snow the Goalie. If you haven't subscribed yet, make sure you hit the subscribe button. That helps us. Also, get to a computer or an iPhone or something that you can leave a review on iTunes / Apple Podcasts. Leave us a 5-star review and a rating. It really does help us quite a bit. The review part of it is also nice because if you write one out, we will read it on the show. Love us or hate us, leave us a 5-star review and we'll read it on the next episode. Go check out Crossing Broad FC and It's Always Soccer in Philadelphia. Those are all of the shows that we have on the Crossing Broad Podcast Network. So until next time, which will be sometime next week, for Anthony at SanFilippo, I'm Russ at Joy on Broad. Don't forget, if you don't follow us on Twitter yet, make sure you go do that because we're around. We're around during intermissions. We're there before the game. And if there's a question that you really have that is, really pressing throughout the game, just let us know. Maybe if
we might have something cool that we're going to start doing.
Yes, we are.
We'll talk
we're trying
about
to
that later.
finalize that. So assuming that we're able to do the cool thing, we'll announce that on the next show. If we don't announce it on Twitter first. So anyway, for Anthony, I'm Russ, and follow us on Twitter. The links are in the description. All you have to do is click on it, and then you just hit follow. It's pretty nice. And anyway, we'll see you next week.